You smile, but you're not okay. You laugh, but there's a storm behind your eyes. You say, I'm fine, but something inside you is screaming. And the truth is, you've been holding it in for so long. You don't even know what it feels like to feel anymore. There's a prison more dangerous than any wall of steel. It doesn't need bars. It doesn't need locks. It lives inside you, built by your own mind. And its weapon? Suppression. Emotional suppression isn't silence. It's suffocation. It's burying your sadness so deep that even you forget where it lives. It's stacking your fears in the basement of your soul and calling it peace. But make no mistake, those buried emotions, they don't die, they rot, they fester, and one day they rise. They rise in the form of unexplained anger, sudden breakdowns, sleepless nights, constant anxiety, and a haunting numbness that never leaves. You weren't born numb. You were taught to be, taught that crying makes you weak, that speaking up makes you dramatic, that vulnerability is dangerous. So you adapted. You locked parts of yourself away, piece by piece, until all that was left was a mask, and people praise the mask. You're so strong, so calm under pressure. Nothing rattles you. But they don't see the cracks. They don't hear the screaming child inside you begging to be heard. They don't feel the silent grief of a heart that was never allowed to bleed. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly felt something? When was the last time you let yourself break? Just enough to breathe again. When did you start thinking that being unbothered is the same as being healed? Because it's not. Not even close. You think you're in control, but you're not. The pain you suppress controls you. It whispers through your choices. It shapes your relationships. It sabotages your peace. And the worst part? You don't even realize it. This isn't about weakness. This is about emotional survival. And what happens when survival becomes a curse instead of a shield? In this video, we're going deep into the psychology of emotional suppression to reveal what's been quietly killing your joy, sabotaging your growth, and numbing your soul because you can't heal what you won't even admit is hurting. Are you ready to face the silence inside you? Because the truth is waiting, and it's louder than you think. What happens when your emotions have no place to go? Not because you don't feel, but because the world taught you that feeling is a liability. That pain is private. That vulnerability is dangerous. And so, over time, you learn the deadly habit: to swallow the scream, to wear a smile while your insides burn, to nod, agree, stay calm, while your soul begs for release. Emotional suppression isn't just something you do, it becomes something you are, a default setting, a survival program, a quiet deal with yourself that says, if I don't feel it, I won't break. But that's a lie, because what you suppress doesn't disappear. It transforms into tension, into headaches, into gut issues, into isolation, overthinking, self-hatred, and the aching silence you hear right before you fall asleep. Psychologists call it emotional inhibition, but let's call it what it really is: emotional self-abandonment. It's not just pain you push down. It's you, your needs, your truths, your memories, all locked in an emotional dungeon because you were taught to believe they were too much. Maybe it started in childhood, when crying was punished, when emotions were ignored, when you were told to man up, be strong, or stop being so sensitive. Or maybe it was later, a heartbreak, a betrayal, a time you showed your feelings and got burned for it. So you shut down, not because you wanted to, but because it was safer. But here's the twisted part. You can't selectively numb emotions. If you shut off sadness, you also shut off joy. If you bury anger, you bury passion. If you suppress grief, you suppress love. You end up in a life where you're functioning but not living, performing but not connecting, present but not whole. In this video, we're not just exposing a behavior. We're peeling back the mask. We'll uncover why you suppress emotions without even realizing it, what emotional suppression does to your mind and body, how it hijacks your relationships, and most importantly, how to finally break free from the silence you were never meant to carry. This is not a lecture. This is a confrontation, a mirror, because if you're emotionally numb, disconnected, or exhausted from pretending, you're not alone. You're conditioned. But awareness changes everything. And when you understand the psychology of suppression, you take the first step towards something rare, real healing, real freedom, real emotional power. Are you ready to stop running from your feelings? Because they've never stopped running after you. See, I know one wakes up and decides to bury their emotions. It's not a choice. It's a response to a world that punishes feeling. The programming begins quietly, not with violence, but with subtle signals that your feelings are too loud, too much, too inconvenient. A mother sighs every time you cry. A father says, "Toughen up, stop acting weak." A teacher mocks you for being too emotional. A friend rolls their eyes when you open up. And in that moment, your brain learns something powerful. Feeling equals danger. Children are not born suppressing their emotions. They cry loudly, laugh uncontrollably, scream when hurt, because they haven't been conditioned yet. But then the world steps in and teaches them what's acceptable, what's mature, what's strong. They learn that being quiet is rewarded, that being good means being composed, and that certain emotions, anger, sadness, fear, are not welcome. So they adapt to survive, to fit in, to stay safe. Psychologists call this emotional conditioning. It's not just about behavior. It's about rewiring the brain. Each time you suppress a feeling and get praise for it, your brain releases dopamine. It rewards you for not being yourself. And just like that, a habit forms. You smile when you want to scream. You say, "I'm fine," when you're breaking inside. You crack a joke when the pain gets too close to the surface. But make no mistake, this isn't strength. This is survival mode. And survival mode isn't meant to be permanent. It's meant to get you through danger, not through life. And yet, so many people get stuck there. Decades later, they don't even know who they are because their emotional truth has been buried under years of performance. This is where emotional suppression becomes dangerous because unexpressed emotions don't disappear. They transform. Sadness becomes numbness. Anger becomes self-hatred. Fear becomes overthinking. Love becomes anxiety. Vulnerability becomes shame. Your emotions, once natural responses, become internal threats. And you build walls, not just to keep people out, but to keep your own feelings in. And here's the part that breaks most people. You begin to suppress emotions so effectively, you don't even know you're doing it anymore. It becomes your default, like breathing, like blinking, like lying to yourself with a smile. This is the silent program, running in the background of your mind, hijacking your decisions, controlling your reactions, shaping your entire identity. And unless it's interrupted, it will keep running. Silently, powerfully, endlessly. But awareness is the glitch in the system. By understanding this hidden programming, you begin to see your behaviors not as flaws, but as survival codes, written by a younger version of you trying to stay alive. And once you see the code, you can change it. This is not weakness. This is psychology. This is programming. And you can rewrite it. You don't get to ignore your emotion for free. Every suppressed feeling charges a price. And that price is your peace. You think you're in control. You smile. You nod. You work hard. You survive. But inside, your system is cracking. Because the human body is not designed to store pain. It's designed to release it. But when you don't cry, when you don't rage, when you don't speak, that pain has to go somewhere. So where does it go? Into your muscles as tension, into your chest as tightness, into your stomach as nausea and digestive issues, into your mind as anxiety, depression, insomnia. Psychologists call this somatization, when your emotional wounds take on physical form. You say, "I'm just tired." But it's not just exhaustion, it's emotional fatigue, from carrying feelings you were never allowed to express. You say, "I have trust issues." But it's not just distrust. It's years of betrayal that you were forced to smile through. You say, I feel empty. But it's not emptiness. It's all the words you never said, all the tears you never cried, all the truths you buried so deep you forgot they existed. And the scariest part, you become addicted to pretending everything is okay. Because facing the pain feels dangerous, too raw, too real, too big. So you numb it, distract it, bury it with overworking, with scrolling, with perfectionism, with people-pleasing, with fake positivity. You become an expert in self-abandonment. But here's what no one tells you. What you suppress doesn't stay small. It grows in silence, in the background, in the dark, until one day you snap over something tiny. Someone forgets to reply. A glass breaks. You miss a deadline. And suddenly you're crying, shaking, raging. Not because of that small event, but because your body finally overflowed. That moment, that's not weakness. That's emotional backlog. Years of silence erupting at once. And yet, instead of compassion, you shame yourself again. I'm overreacting. I'm so emotional. I need to toughen up. No, you don't need to toughen up. You need to release. You need to feel. You need to unlearn the lie that emotions make you weak. Suppression also rewires your brain. Neuroscience shows that constantly avoiding emotions shrinks your ability to regulate them. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes overactive. Your prefrontal cortex, your logic center, weakens. So now, you're not only suppressing pain, you're becoming less capable of handling it when it comes. And over time, you begin to confuse numbness with peace, emptiness with strength, silence with safety. But deep inside, you know something's wrong. You feel disconnected, hollow, trapped in your own head. You're not broken. You're suppressed. You're not emotionless. You're overflowing, but locked. And this lock, you didn't choose it. It was installed by a world that told you, don't feel too much, don't cry, don't be a burden. But here's the truth you need to hear. Your emotions are not the enemy. Suppression is. Pain, sadness, anger, joy, these are signals, not threats. They are messages from your inner world. And ignoring them doesn't make you stronger. It just makes you... You're so strong. You're always calm. I wish I could be like you. They say these things with admiration. They see your calm face, your organized life, your ability to smile when the world is falling apart. But they don't see what's underneath. They don't see the mask. Because that's what it is, isn't it? A performance. A carefully rehearsed, emotionally polished version of yourself that fits into every room, but belongs to none. You've learned to hide your truth, not just from others, but from yourself. You say, I'm okay, even when your chest is tight and your mind is screaming. You say, it's not a big deal, even when you feel like the world just collapsed. You say, I just want everyone to be happy. But deep down, you know, you're not included in that everyone. This is emotional masking, a psychological defense strategy you built to survive. And it worked. In fact, it worked so well, you forgot it was a mask. You became the strong one, the reliable one, the peacekeeper, the fixer. But here's the twist. The more perfect your mask became, the more invisible your real self became. You stopped being known. You became useful, dependable, liked, but not seen. People came to you for advice, for help, for comfort. But who comes to you? Who sees you? Not the role you play, but the real, messy, hurting, tired person underneath? The answer might break your heart. Because emotional masks don't just hide pain. They invite silence. The people around you stop asking if you're okay, because you always seem okay. They stop offering help, because you never show weakness. They stop seeing you, because all they can see is the mask. And here's the cruel irony. You wear the mask to be loved, but it ends up making you feel unlovable. Because deep down, a voice inside whispers. They only like you because they don't know the real you. If they saw your pain, your anger, your sadness, they'd leave. You're only safe when you're pretending. And so you stay trapped, not because no one cares, but because no one knows how much you're bleeding inside. Your laughter becomes a shield. Your schedule becomes a distraction. Your achievements become proof that you're okay. But at night, when it's quiet, you feel it, that hollow echo inside your chest, that ache that no one sees, that exhaustion that success can't fix. So why do we do it? Why do we wear the mask? Because somewhere along the line, you were taught that honesty is dangerous. Maybe you cried once and got punished. Maybe you opened up and got mocked. Maybe you showed weakness and got abandoned. So you learned emotions equals vulnerability. Vulnerability equals pain. Therefore, emotions equals pain. And now, as an adult, you still live by that formula. You still believe that survival means silence. But here's the tragedy. You didn't build a mask because you're fake. You built it because you were afraid. Afraid of being too much. Afraid of being rejected. Afraid of being unloved. And that fear shaped your entire emotional existence. So ask yourself, who are you without the mask? Have you ever even met that person? Do you remember what it felt like to cry freely? To say what you really felt? To be vulnerable without shame? Or has it been so long that even you forgot the shape of your own soul? You are not your mask. You are not your performance. You are not your silence. There is a you underneath all this, still alive, still waiting, still real. You stopped feeling a long time ago, not because you wanted to, but because it became too dangerous to feel. There was a time when you cried easily, laughed freely, raged when things were unfair, felt joy, sorrow, connection deeply. But now you sit quietly, staring into space. Someone asks how you feel, and you have no answer, not because you don't want to share, but because you genuinely don't know. This is not peace. It's not strength. It's emotional numbness, the silent freeze of the soul. And here's the haunting part. Most people don't even notice they're frozen. They go through the motions. Work, eat, sleep, scroll, repeat. They function. They perform. They blend in. But inside, they feel nothing. No excitement. No grief. No depth. Just dullness. This is the cost of long-term emotional suppression. Your nervous system, your mind, they can only handle so much overload. So eventually it shuts down, like a breaker switch after a power surge. And when it flips off, it doesn't just block the pain. It blocks everything. You don't feel sadness, but you also don't feel joy. You don't feel hurt, but you also don't feel love. You've gone emotionally offline. And in this frozen state, something else happens. You lose your sense of self. You forget who you are when you're not pretending. You can't access what you really want or what you really hate. You just move and do and respond like a machine. The freeze response isn't just poetic. It's biological. Your body has 3 primary survival modes: fight, flight, freeze. Freeze is the last resort. It's what the brain does when escape isn't possible, when expression is dangerous, when you're overwhelmed and cornered. And that's what emotional suppression does to us. It trains the brain to freeze permanently. You might feel it as chronic fatigue, apathy, disconnection from others, the inability to cry, the inability to feel joy, even in good moments, the absence of desire. You're not lazy. You're not cold. You're numb. And numbness is an emotion. It's the absence of emotion. It's what happens when pain piles up and never gets released. The danger? Most people mistake this for healing. They say, I'm fine now, because they're no longer crying, no longer exploding, no longer reacting. But silence isn't peace. Stillness isn't healing. Frozen is not free. You've simply gone quiet, because your inner self has gone into hiding. And the scariest part? Many people live their whole lives this way. Numb, disconnected, frozen. They don't even know what they've lost, because they don't remember what it felt like to be fully alive. So ask yourself now, do you feel joy deeply? Do you cry when your heart breaks? Do you feel connection when someone holds your hand? Or has it all gone cold? This isn't who you are. It's who you became to survive what you couldn't express. But now it's time to wake up the frozen parts of your soul, because feeling again, even pain, is the first step back to being fully human. There comes a moment when the silence inside you becomes too loud, when the pain you buried for years starts leaking through the cracks. You try to hold it in. You say, "I'm fine." You smile harder, work harder, pretend harder, but your body knows, your subconscious knows, and slowly it starts to collapse. This is the breaking point. It doesn't look dramatic. It's not always screaming or crying or chaos. Sometimes it looks like sudden outbursts over small things, random panic attacks in quiet rooms, insomnia that won't go away, apathy that kills every motivation, rage you can't explain, self-hate that won't shut up, or worse, total emptiness. This isn't weakness. This is what happens when you suppress too much. For too long, every emotion you ignored, every truth you swallowed, every boundary you erased, becomes a pressure inside your mind. You may not hear it building, but it is, and eventually it explodes inward, not as fire, but as self-destruction. You start pushing people away, saying yes when you mean no, isolating from the world, seeking pain to feel something, sabotaging everything good in your life, breaking your own heart before someone else can. This isn't random. This is emotional suicide. Not physical, but psychological. You're trying to kill the parts of yourself that were never allowed to exist. The angry part, the needy part, the vulnerable part, the child who was never heard. And deep down, you may think you deserve it, because that's what emotional suppression does. It doesn't just numb your feelings. It rewires your beliefs. You start to think, "I'm too much. I don't deserve love. I'll always be alone. Something's wrong with me." So you don't reach out. You don't ask for help. You suffer in silence. And every time you do, you dig the hole deeper. But here's the truth. Your pain is not the enemy. It's the evidence, the proof that something inside you is screaming to be free. Those breakdowns, they're not your failure. They're your soul breaking the surface. The self-sabotage is not weakness. It's a last attempt to get your own attention. Because deep inside, beneath the silence, the numbness, the chaos, there's a part of you still alive, still fighting, still waiting to finally be heard. That's the part that needs you now. Not your mask, not your perfection. You, the real you, the one who's been hiding under all the emotional armor. And if you listen, truly listen, you'll realize the self-destruction was never about death. It was about rebirth, a forced awakening, a scream from the shadows, begging you to stop suppressing and start healing. It starts slowly, a flicker, a soft whisper inside the silence, a moment where, just for a second, you feel something. Maybe it's a lump in your throat while watching a movie, a tear that surprises you, a sudden warmth when someone hugs you, a song that hits you deeper than usual. It's not dramatic. It's not loud, but it's real. This is the awakening. The moment your frozen self begins to thaw. It's terrifying because feeling again means opening the door to everything you locked away. The grief, the rage, the guilt, the need, the love you never got to give. But it also means something else. You're still alive. Here's the secret no one tells you. Emotions are not your enemy. They are your compass, your warning system, your truth. Pain says, something hurt. Anger says, something isn't fair. Fear says, something might hurt again. Love says, this matters. Sadness says, this mattered. You weren't broken for feeling too much. You were human. And somewhere along the line, that humanity was made to feel dangerous. So you buried it. But now, you're brave enough to dig it back up. And here's what happens when you do. You start crying without shame. You get angry and express it without destroying anyone. You feel joy not just because of things, but for being. You feel love, even if it still scares you. It won't be perfect. You'll shake. You'll question it. You'll want to shut it down again. But don't, because this is healing. Not the fake, polished kind. Not the Instagram quote kind. But the raw, messy, real kind. The kind where you sit in your room and sob and feel something you haven't felt in 10 years. The kind where you speak a truth that makes your hands tremble. The kind where you finally say, I need help. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I want more. That's not weakness. That's strength. The kind of strength that can only be born from pain. Because healing isn't becoming someone new. It's remembering who you were before you had to hide. It's peeling off every lie you told yourself. That you're too much. That you should stay silent. That it's your fault. That you deserve the pain. And replacing them with truths like, I feel deeply and that's a gift. I have a right to take up space. I can be angry and still be good. I deserve softness too. This awakening is not a moment. It's a process, a path back to yourself. And every time you choose to feel, instead of numb, to speak, instead of swallow, to stay, instead of run, you reclaim a piece of your soul. You're not just healing, you're remembering. Imagine standing in front of a shattered mirror, each broken shard reflecting a version of you that once was before the silence, before the fear, before the armor. That's where healing leads you. Not forward, but inward. Not toward becoming someone else, but toward reclaiming the self you buried. You see, we weren't born guarded. We weren't born numb. We didn't come into this world ashamed of our emotions. We learned that. We learned to shrink, to stay quiet, to fit in, to not upset others. So we cut ourselves into fragments, the acceptable parts we showed the world, and the rest locked away in the dark. But those hidden parts, they didn't die. They just waited for the moment you'd be strong enough not to fight them, but to invite them back home. This is where the transformation begins. It's not just healing wounds. It's reintegrating your soul, the parts of you that got exiled, the child who laughed too loudly, the teen who cried too much, the dreamer who believed in magic, the protector who screamed no when you couldn't, the artist who stopped painting, the lover who stopped loving. They're all still there. They never left. They just lost their voice. Now it's time to listen. Reclaiming your lost self isn't soft. It's not poetic. It's brutal. It means facing what you became to survive. The masks, the lies, the defenses. It means asking yourself, who did I become to feel safe? Whose approval did I chase at the cost of my truth? What did I silence just to be loved? And then, with trembling hands, choosing yourself anyway. This is not a return to innocence. It's a rise into power, not the kind that dominates, the kind that aligns, where your voice matches your values, where your needs aren't hidden but honored, where your presence no longer asks for permission. You begin to walk differently, not because you're faking confidence, but because you're no longer apologizing for your existence. And here's the irony. The more whole you become, the less you need anyone to validate you. You stop chasing, stop proving, stop shrinking. You start being, fully, authentically, loudly, even if it terrifies the world around you. This is not a finish line. This is a foundation. The beginning of life on your terms. A life where emotional suppression is no longer your prison, but your past. Where your voice is no longer silenced, but sacred. Where your pain is no longer your identity, but your origin story. You are not just healing, you are returning. And this return is your revolution. Welcome back to your true self. They've missed you. What happens when you stop pretending? When the mask you've worn for years, the polite smile, the perfect answers, the I'm fine, finally slips off? At first, it's terrifying, because that mask, it didn't just hide your pain. It became your identity. You forgot where the mask ended, and you began. But then something strange happens. When you drop the act, you breathe differently, deeper, wider, freer. The weight of pretending disappears. And for the first time, You don't feel exhausted just from being alive. You begin to speak your mind, not to provoke, but because your truth matters. You begin to say no, not out of rebellion, but out of self-respect. You start choosing people who see the real you and walking away from those who never tried. That is freedom, but make no mistake. This kind of freedom, it comes with loss. You might lose relationships built on performance. You might lose admiration built on perfection. You might lose comfort built on compliance. But what you gain is priceless. You gain peace. Not the fake kind that comes from avoiding conflict, but the real kind that comes from living in alignment. You gain connection, not with those who love your mask, but with those who love your messy, honest self. You gain power, not over others, but over the one thing that matters most. Your own life. Living without the mask isn't loud. It's not a dramatic declaration. It's quiet, subtle, unshakable. It's waking up and not dreading the day. It's looking in the mirror and not flinching. It's walking into a room and not shrinking. It's knowing you're safe within yourself. That's the kind of freedom most people never taste, because it's not given. It's earned through truth, through courage, through pain, through presence. This is not just the end of suppression. It's a beginning of sovereignty, where you no longer live for others' comfort, where your emotions are not your enemies, where your past no longer holds a pen. You are not hiding anymore. You are here, fully, finally. No more masks, no more roles, no more scripts, just you, raw, real, radiant. That is liberation. What is the true cost of emotional suppression? It's not just a tear you didn't shed, not just a scream you swallowed. It's not just a truth you never spoke. It's years of your life, lived in half-light, performing instead of feeling, surviving instead of living. You become a shell, smiling, nodding, moving through the world, while inside a quiet war rages. Unseen, unheard, unhealed. That war bleeds into everything. Your relationships feel hollow. Your goals feel empty. Your peace feels fake. Because when your emotions are chained, your soul is too. And here's the irony. You thought hiding your feelings kept you safe, but all it really did was keep you small. You thought being strong meant being silent, but silence was your prison. You thought ignoring pain made you powerful, but the pain grew in the shadows, until it whispered lies you believed. I'm not enough. I'm too much. No one will love the real me. But what if those were never your truths? What if they were just the echoes of what you buried? Now imagine this. You, standing in front of your own reflection, not the polished, posed version, but the raw one, the one with tired eyes and trembling hands. And instead of judgment, you offer understanding. Instead of rejection, you offer warmth. Instead of fear, you offer truth. That's where healing begins. Because release is not about falling apart. It's about coming together. It's about allowing yourself to feel so you can finally move forward. Tears aren't weakness. They're clarity. They wash away what words can't. Anger isn't destruction. It's protection. A signal that your boundaries were crossed. Grief isn't endless. It's proof that you love deeply. And once you stop running, stop stuffing, stop pretending, you start remembering who you are, what you need, what you deserve. So ask yourself, what are you still holding back? What haven't you allowed yourself to feel? And more importantly, what might happen if you finally let it out? The cost of suppression is your life unlived, but the reward of release is everything you've been searching for. Peace, clarity, love, power, wholeness. It's not too late, not even close. Your emotions aren't broken. You aren't broken. You are buried, and it's time to rise. From silence to expression, from fear to freedom, from suppression to truth. You've walked through the silence. You've faced the shadows. And you've heard what most people spend a lifetime avoiding. Yourself. This journey wasn't about motivation. It wasn't about pretending you're okay. It was about finally asking, what have I been running from? And now maybe, just Maybe you've stopped hiding, stopped apologizing, stopped punishing yourself for feeling. Because your emotions are not the enemy. They are the signal fire. They are your truth, wrapped in discomfort. And now you know, everything you pushed down, everything you called weakness, was your strength, waiting for a voice. You were never meant to stay silent. You were meant to speak, to scream, to cry, to rage, to whisper, to feel. You were meant to be whole. So here's the truth. You don't heal by forgetting. You heal by remembering. You don't grow by suppressing. You grow by embracing. You don't become stronger by closing your heart. You become stronger by opening it, even when it hurts. Because the strongest people are not the ones who never feel pain. They're the ones who feel it fully and still choose to rise. So today, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to be honest with yourself. Let it hurt. Let it speak. Let it pass. And let it guide you, not into fear, but into freedom. Because you are not your pain. You are the light that survives it.